This court is a critical trial of the juris system. I'm afraid no room for doubt is permissible. You will testify to the court about what you noticed.
When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk. He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. I thought nothing of it at the time, of course. Now that I think about it, what if he was writing a suicide note?
A suicide note?
Yep, he had this look on his face. Man's face inscrutable as a quadratic equation, end quote. Apparently, the people who made this game have a lot of difficulty with quadratic equations. They're not that hard. Suicide? Poor Mr. Misham. But that means Vera is innocent. Would someone commit suicide in the middle of an interview? Oh.
Very well. You may begin your cross-examination.
I guess if you really wanted to be newsworthy. Let's talk about, you want to talk about my death? Here you go. Well, when I was a young boy, they'd remember that interview. When I entered the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk. A likely story. Was there anyone at the studio other than Mr. Misham? Well, his daughter Vera, of course. Was anyone besides Mr. Misham and Vera present? Not a single one. Not a cat, not a rat, not even a mouse. The only person who didn't belong to that studio there was you, wasn't it, Mr. Brushel? I know what you're doing. I know your game. Attorney uses classic Ramsden phenomenon ploy, end quote. If you intend to suggest that this reporter is a suspect, I'm sure you also intend to present evidence supporting that assertion, correct? In the meantime, let's move along, shall we? He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. So he put the letter away when he saw you. Early reporter gets worm, end quote. That's my secret. Alright, we know about that letter and we know it's not a suicide letter. I'm not sure I follow. It's the night of the interview. I arrived 15 minutes ahead of schedule. The handle turns, the door opens, and I barge right in. Are you sure that's okay to do? I mean, isn't that unlawful entry? Really? Mr. Misham sure seemed to think so. You should have seen him. He crammed his letter into that yellow envelope as fast as he could. I know a secret when I spot one, and that was one.
It does seem significant. Well, Mr. Justice?
I wonder. It does have the ring of something important. Add it to the testimony, why not? The defense finds this testimony vital, Your Honor.
Very well. Please add it to the testimony, then.
Hey, why not? My account comes free of charge. It was a yellow envelope. I heard it was left at the crime scene. Do we have that envelope? We have a red envelope. We do not have a yellow envelope. Let's press it. And you saw him seal this yellow envelope with the letter. Hey, don't look at me like that. I saw what I saw. Apollo, you think this might be our big break? Yeah. What I need is to show some decisive evidence now. I thought nothing of it at the time, of course. You didn't think anything might be wrong at the time? Hey, when I go in for an interview, that's what I'm there to do. Interviewer finds looking more effective than caring, end quote. So what about now? Thinking back on it, did you sense anything strange in Mr. Misham's behavior? Well, yeah, that's why I'm telling you all this to begin with.
Very well, continue with your testimony.
Now that I think about it, what if he was writing a suicide note? A suicide note? What does that even mean? Well, yeah, don't quote me or anything. I'm just saying it's a possibility, you know? So you didn't actually check the letter? Of course not, it was sealed! Contents of can unknown until can is open, end quote. Schrodinger's can. You can always check the label.
Do you think Mr. Misham was writing a suicide note?
If he was, that would solve the case in a jiffy.
It kind of makes me wonder about that letter.
All right. So, quickly sealed the envelope. It was a yellow envelope. I heard it was left at the crime scene. We have this red envelope that was definitely at the crime scene in the victim's desk drawer, open and then resealed. Is Brushel colorblind by any chance? Is there such a thing as red-yellow colorblind? If you thought it was green, then that would have been like really interesting, but I'm gonna throw it out. Yeah, this is something. As it just so happens, there was a single letter in a desk drawer at the scene, in a red envelope.
What?
Wow, that would look painful. Prosecutor Gavin. Yeah? Was a yellow envelope found at the scene of the crime? Unfortunately, no, but her forehead. It's easy to mistake the color of an envelope. I guess, but not this envelope. You see, it was postmarked already, 7 years ago.
Well, Mr. Brushel,
I can explain that. Drew, right? He wanted to get that letter in an envelope pronto. Get it out of my sight. Get it out of my sight. Get it out of sight of my beady eyes, right? Yeah? No, I know. They're terrible. So he grabbed the nearest envelope and crammed away.
And what about the whole red and yellow envelope contradiction, chump?
well, Mr. Justice, have you anything to say to the witness's claim?
That night, the victim put a letter he had been writing in a red envelope. It's impossible because it's been sealed. That's impossible. I like your expression, so full of confidence. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you. It's simple, really. As it just so happens, the defensive team investigated the contents of this envelope with the assistance of a forensic scientist. What? Really? Note that this letter is addressed to Drew Misham. Oh! Why would he address a letter to himself? Let alone send a suicide note to himself. Dear Drew, I'm going to miss you when I'm gone. Bye me forever. Bye. Signed, Drew.
I've been scooped!
Order! 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 Mr. Brushel, can you explain this to the court?
Oh, my, how could I have forgotten? I suppose this happens to the best of us. Reporter gets old, forgets lots, end quote.
I'm still waiting for an explanation, Mr. Brushel.
Well, here's the thing, see? After he put his letter in that envelope, Mr. Misham sat there searching his desk drawer for something.
His desk drawer?
Yes, a stamp, a so-called postage stamp, end quote, services payment for, postal workers.
A stamp? Whatever for?
Well, to mail his letter. What else? And then, why yes, I think I saw him put it in his letter box. Yes, it was a yellow envelope, and he put it in that box.
Well, apparently this yellow letter has nothing to do with this case.
Oh, how I wish it did! Just think if that were a suicide note, what a story! Starlight suicide note in front of reporter, falls, end quote.
As I was saying, that has nothing to do with this case. That said...
Yes, Your Honor.
It makes me wonder about the contents of that red envelope.
Let's read it out loud in the court, why not? Sign the papers and send the enclosed envelope, blah, blah, blah.
$100,000 is quite a good deal of money. Ooh.
So this was from 7 years ago, yeah?
So, am I finished? Here I mean, am I finished here? Can I leave? Can I write a story? Can I go right now? I'd like to put it in right now. I'd like to put it out, just right away, put it on the internet, post it on my blog. I was thinking of, going home to start writing.
I hate to state what should be pretty obvious to literally anyone. But when you catch the scent of a story, you make that rather unique face.
Yeah, come on! Attorney has active imagination, little else, end quote.
Even I noticed something in my eyes aren't what they used to be. You know, I'm starting to understand what all this perceiving stuff is about.
The judge has active imagination, end quote.
Please, continue your testimony. Tell us about this scent of a story.
Hey, I'm the one asking the questions here, usually.
Okay, the scent of a woman. A story.
Actually, it took a bit of work to get a thumbs up on the interview. Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote. The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago. That red envelope probably had something to do with it. Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare.
So you threatened to go to the press with this story? That's how you got your interview? Blackmail?
Well, yes. No. It wasn't exactly black. It was red mail. Red mail. That's slightly better.
Something wrong, Mr. Brushel?
Look. This is my story, my tidbit. Journalist's info is livelihood, end quote.
I see.
While you have me chatting away in here, what's going on out there? What if some Wally Wordsworth or Sally Scooper gets onto my story? They could be going to press while I'm going to waste.
The court feels your pain, Mr. Brushel. Mr. Justice, let's pick up the pace.
A certain case, 7 years ago. Wait. 7 years ago.
Something? No, I'm not paying attention. Sorry, Polly.
Okay.
Actually, it took a bit of work to get a thumbs up on the interview.
My perceive is definitely able to be used now, but we're going to press through first and get what info we can out of him. The victim, Drew Misham, had an aversion to reporters.
Boy, I guess not even my considerable charms did much for him. Until I finally got my thumbs up, that is.
Maybe you can elaborate on that a bit for us.
Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote.
Exactly what sort of story was this?
Oh, little one, like I said. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing in between. I might have just said I had a lead on this particular story. But I didn't threaten or cajole or nothing, honest.
So a suggestion was enough to get an interview. Mr. Misham must have really wanted to keep it under wraps.
The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago.
Let's go back to that one. 7 years ago, huh? A certain case 7 years ago? Tell us, what case?
Let me say one thing, Mr. Attorney, and you can quote me on this one. I can't talk about that case.
What? Why not?
It's about journalistic pride and staunchness and credibility and connections. Journalist reveals sources only over his dead body, end quote. Not gonna get it out of me. So will it be gonna strangle me? Dead man don't tell tales, Mr. Attorney.
He sounds pretty determined not to talk.
Our chances of breaking his will aren't looking good. That red envelope probably had something to do with it.
We're gonna press it. On the one hand, we have your story, and on the other hand, this letter. What makes you think the two are related?
Oh, I was just saying it's possible. Call it reporter's intuition, end quote. Hey, I say a lot of things. You gonna pick all of them apart? Be my guest.
All of them? No, just the incredibly suspicious ones.
I see. Anything else to add about Mr. Misham?
Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare. Good at painting. Like his art.
Just how amazing was Mr. Misham's talent?
Huh? Ooh-wee, boy, I mean, hey, he's a star, man, a star. The flow of his brush is like a great undulating river across the canvas. Artist paints, light up, studio like sun, end quote.
This guy is full of wacky gestures, but that one just now was wackier than usual.
He looks kind of nervous to me, Apollo.
Definitely. I'm sensing something different than before here. Maybe it's time to bring out you-know-what. My eyes and ability to see things.
The test would left a bad taste in my mouth.
It all makes sense. Nothing jumps out as ridiculous.
I wonder what this story he's talking about is. It must have been good to get an interview with a famous recluse like that.
Something powerful enough to drag Drew Misham out of hiding. I wonder. Maybe it has something to do with Mr. Misham's art? So it's clearly going to be something to do with his toothbrush in one of these quotes. A certain case from 7 years ago that he won't talk about. No, probably something to do with it. Stay true, but Drew's talent was without compare. Let's look at this. Say what you will. I'm going right here and looking at it. But Drew's talent... Oh, it's about comparing the art. Well, it doesn't seem to be the toothbrush. Let's look at his mouth. Say what you will, but Drew's talent... Nothing in his nose. I was really expecting that nose, too. What about this pin behind his ear? Doesn't seem to be the pin. Yeah, I think it's definitely the without compare. Oh, whoa. He got sweaty. He had sweaty armpits. It just got dark under here. Say what you will. It is his armpits. Gotcha! He gets sweaty pits. Sweat much, Mr. Brushel?
Okay, yeah, well, a man can't help his glands, you know.
It's more than that. When Mr. Misham's talent was mentioned, you suddenly began to sweat buckets. You're hiding something about his talent.
What? That's ridiculous.
Evidence time. Let's show where Mr. Misham's true talent lay. Mr. Misham's true talent lay. It just so happens I have evidence showing the talent mentioned in that letter. It's gonna be either the hidden painting or the landscape he was working on. Let's check and see what it says. I think the stolen painting is the one here. This painting was found in Mr. Misham's studio. Huh? There are two problems with this painting. The first is it wasn't painted by Mr. Misham. The second is that there was another painting in the studio, which looked exactly like this one, except it was only half done. Then we have a letter discussing a payment of $100,000, which is just a certain business operation. The business of making forgeries. Horrifying. That is all, Your Honor.
Everyone, please! Everyone! Can we keep this private, please? This is my story, my scoop. Please, everybody in the audience, any jurists, please start writing about it.
Forgery. That's a serious crime.
Misham is known as an artist these days, but there were rumors he dabbled in another kind of art until a few years back.
Another
art meaning forgery.
Misham was talented, all right. Talented at making precise, detailed fakes. A fact that certain criminal elements were quick to discover.
criminal elements? What? You can't seriously be talking about...
Exactly. I'm talking about forging evidence. The rumors started circulating 7 years ago.
7 years ago? So are we to understand that this letter, this payment of $100,000 was for...
Exactly. Forged evidence nets tidy profit. End quote.
Whoa.
Order! Why, it's like our victim was living a double life.
Aha. This is my chance. So the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? He could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about. This is my first time hearing of this criminal world. We certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation. But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activity here. But there is no proof tying this letter to our case. Huh? Our case was and remains simple from the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned that mug that night. And you, of course.
Yeah, what? Hey, the only thing I poison is my pen when I'm writing reviews.
Mr. Brushel, your testimony to this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting acumen.
What are you talking about? My journalism is rock solid. Journalism so solid you could stand an elephant on it. End quote.
In any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in that studio from the recap, the trial is over.
Apollo, what's he talking about? The cross-examination showed Mr. Brushel didn't have reason or means to poison him. As long as there are no other suspects, then the killer had to be Vera. That's what. This next testimony is our last chance.
Mr. Brushel, your testimony, please.
No pressure. The interview, a recap.
The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug.
No, not true.
And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing!
That's true.
Clearly the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter.
A nice testimony, clear, succinct, and without room for doubt.
Aw, shucks! You really think so?
I believe this clarifies the situation that night. Very well, Mr. Justice. You may begin your final cross-examination.
Right. I still have one trump card left to play, and I won't let this trial end until I use it. Oh yeah, he also looked a stamp. That's a really good point.
The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. We're gonna press all the things.
But that doesn't prove Vera poisoned it. How many times have we heard that one here, forehead? The poison reaches victim via that coffee mug. And from where did that coffee come from, Not to beat a dead horse again and again, but perhaps you could fill this in.
I'm on it! You need a horse to beat! I'm your man! I'll get one straight from the track, we'll pound it till it can't move anymore. And then a little more. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted it much herself.
Hold it! And you witnessed her pouring the coffee?
Of course I didn't witness it when she came in with that tray. The coffee was already poured and steaming.
Let us not forget the defendant has admitted to pouring the coffee herself. I heard her statement. I poured, I served, and I killed.
What?
That last part was just a little joke. She did not say that, sorry. I don't think I'm going to get anywhere with this coffee mug. I need to find another weak spot in this case.
The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug. I kind of wanted to lean in for a kiss. Thought I was feeling a little something, little tension, little dramatic. But no, it was just me, my imagination. I'm a very lonely man.
You're sure about that?
Well, to be really, really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies the whole time.
One of those candies might have been poisoned. Yet at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room, and no mint residue was found. It was a long shot anyway. Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than coffee.
Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof.
The possibility is there. I can feel it. Just maybe not prove it yet. And possibility isn't going to cut it, not now. Mr. Misham ingested that poison via a route other than that coffee. I can prove it. Proof is possible. I gotta risk it. I really would like to press the other things first, but they put me in the corner and I guess I'm just gonna go there. Let's see your proof then.
Please show us your evidence. What evidence shows that the victim wasn't poisoned via his coffee mug?
We have a tiny, tiny frame measuring 2 inches by 2 inches, bears traces of the deadly poison aquinine. No! Must I explain this over and over? We don't need possibilities here, Hair Forehead. We need proof. I know that! Is this not proof? It's very... You should also know that every proof has its moment. Perhaps you're a bit early. Oh, come on! Then you know it's important.
I can tell you what we know at this point. The victim put nothing to his mouth but that coffee mug.
They didn't give me a penalty. Another hole in this case needs plugging before I can prove anything. But first things first, I'd better uncover a weak spot before I try to strike again.
On with the cross-examination.
I'll take it. I'm surprised they didn't actually give me a penalty for that, because it was close, but too soon.
And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing!
Nothing? Not one thing? You're sure?
Yep, sure can be, unless a letter was put in there and then somebody picked up that letter. Well, with one exception.
What exception? What?
Journalist Spike Brushel does interview, leave studio, in quote, I got out! Come on! It's a joke, get it? Not funny, I know, but still!
Did something leave the studio that night? Why does that sound familiar? Where have I heard something like that before?
Now that we've proven our witness is a comedian of sorts, I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea what, if anything, might have left the studio that night?
Just one thing. I think one thing might very well have left the studio that night, actually. A certain something that has vanished from the crime scene.
By which you mean... Something other than our witness.
Of course. Don't tell me. Farah Misham. Believe me, any comic relief I may provide is entirely unintentional.
And let's see what you've got for us, Mr. Justice.
Well, this thing wasn't at the scene of the crime, so I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken from the scene, and that is the mailbox. This is the only link between that studio and the outside world.
A letterbox?
What did Mr. Brushel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter.
Yeah, I said that, and yeah, it was true.
Furthermore, you went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letter box. But that very same letter box was empty. In other words, that night the yellow envelope disappeared. Yes, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing. Huh?
Here's a point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Misham. Is it really important that the envelope the witness says he saw disappeared?
Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me.
Very well then, the witness will add this to his testimony.
You got it.
I still think this fails to change anything, Hair Forehead. I wouldn't be so sure. A letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. This is exactly the opening I've been looking for.
A letter was put in the post office from the studio, but I hardly think it matters.
Nothing could be more serious than an envelope disappearing from that studio, and you were hiding that fact from us.
Yeah, well, actually...
I don't argue the possibility that a letter disappeared from that studio. But Hair Forehead, isn't there a much more serious question before us? Right, how Mr. Misham was poisoned, I know. But Mr. Brushel's testimony has changed, which means the facts of the case have too. And what he's told us means something entirely different now, I'm starting to think.
Let's keep thinking, Apollo. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter. Let's press it. Let's see what they say.
You say clearly as though it were obvious. But this claim that the defendant poisoned the victim is merely conjecture.
Yeah, well, you see, in my business, it's all about making the most ridiculous things sound right. A bad habit, I know. Yes, well, actually, I guess this is more of a case of ridiculous journalist sounds wrong, end quote.
The court is forced to agree with you. Please refrain from wild conjecture.
Understood loud and clear.
If only I could believe that.
What do you think, Apollo? Everything he's saying seems so not flawed.
Well, that's kind of what you want from a testimony, really. I need to keep my eye on what matters. How and why was Drew Misham killed? Vera poured the coffee. That's not going to change. But if that coffee didn't kill him, I need to find what did and prove it.
The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant.
Okay, so here we have to find our thing. She was listed during the interview was that mug. A letter was put in the post in the studio, but I hardly think that it matters. I feel like I want to just present this here. I'm going to present this and see what happens. Nothing. Yeah, this is bad. Okay, that's fine. Penalty, penalty, penalty. Unless the envelope does something. Is this now the time to present this here? Nope. This is now the wrong place to present that. He does kiss his daughter's picture a lot, but it doesn't seem to matter apparently.